Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
I'm really excited because I think we have all the pieces together for the vacuum wax injector.
The dog tries to gallop through with a toy, gets tripped over it.
Irene's been down in the studio doing a lot of things down there today. I've been mostly babysitting Rufus because he's really attached to Irene and he doesn't like it when she leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Do I look better?
Yes.
I have the vacuum pump connected. That little adapter that I made seems to work just fine. Doesn't seem to have any leaks in it. It has a relatively large area or large volume that needs to be pumped down right here. Everything's turned off right now because it'd be too loud otherwise.
Yeah, we turned this thing on before when I was sorting some stuff and I was like, whoa!
Well, I think we're ready to give it a new try. By the way, here's the piece of tubing that I used to cut that very short piece of tubing off to make the adapter. So let's go ahead and get things started. You can turn that valve, that switch on right down there.
I don't see a switch. Ah, okay.
It's a little
Black on
noisy.
black.
Let's go ahead and give it a shot, Irene.
Okay, as I recall, I just hit start.
Just hit the pedal right there.
Ah, okay. It's possible that it's waiting for the wax to heat up.
It probably is.
In which case, this is never going to happen.
Well, the temperature sensor in here tells you when it's ready. Oh, you know what? I forgot to hook the compressor up to the unit.
That'll do it. I knew that with error 4 is a lack of air pressure.
You can turn off that vacuum pump.
That's not nearly as loud as the air compressor is. You turned the air compressor on before and I went, oh my gosh. The air compressors are almost always noisy. Actually, the one I have in the studio is, I think, noisier than this one.
It is.
I normally wear hearing protection when I run this sort of stuff. You put earmuffs over the top of your ears, and I've got my my hearing aids are Bluetooth enabled, so I can listen to music. Okay. Now we've got all kinds of error messages going on. Should I turn off this and restart it?
Yes.
Okay. This thing is locked in place now. Now it's coming up. This is one of those systems that takes a little practice, and it's just like if you've ever, I don't guess I've ever shown it. When I go to start my casting process, I actually do what I call a dry run, where I mime the process of actually doing casting. You know, I make believe I've got my flask out of the oven and this and that and the other thing, and that helps me make sure I haven't forgotten any steps. This thing is going to be just like that, where you're like, okay, I need to double check everything.
Well, let's give it another shot.
Okay, we'll turn that on. It should now have vacuum where it needs vacuum and
Air pressure
air where it needs air.
Let's try pressing it.
Let's see what happens. remember where the off button is. Well, that worked. It definitely did all the things it was supposed to do. It would have held a flask, mold in place. It would have stuck it over there and done whatever this thing tells it to do, because this can be set up for different things. It can be set up to inject differently and things like that. But yeah.
Well, now what we need to do is we need to take this down to the studio. We need to figure out where it's going to go. It's on a cart, which is nice because that way Irene can move it around the studio. When she doesn't need it, it doesn't need to be in the way. And when she does need it, she can put it wherever it needs to go.
Well, what I'm doing, I'm in the process of trying to clean up a little bit down there and create a section of carts, basically. So I have a bunch of things on carts that don't always need to be out in the middle of the floor. And when they're not in use, they can be parked. And I've got part of that area cleared up, but I'm debating a couple of different locations for some things.
So we're ready to go ahead and take this down to the studio. When we do that is going to depend upon some other projects that Irene has going on.
Right, I've got a couple of deadlines.
I'm really glad that I have this thing pretty much buttoned up. I'm sure there's going to be more adjustments required, and there's going to be a bunch of experimenting and learning that goes on with it.
Well, like I'm getting an error on this one now because we turned off the
air compressor.
But we need to make a bunch of holders for molds so that this thing has a specific location that everything goes into. And that means we need to buy some plastic. I have to read through and decide. I'm sure there's guidelines about how to set up for different sizes of molds and things like that. And you still need to experiment. I'll have to actually load wax into here and let it heat. And figure out. I assume this is in Celsius, so I'll need to.
All of the measurement devices on this machine are using SI units. That's the standard, international standard of measurements.
Right.
So I had to convert from kPa, kilopascals, to PSI because the machine specifies in kPa. Well, I don't have a compressor that does kPa, but it's easy to convert.
It's just a different measurement. That's all. It's no different than if you're measuring things in inches and centimeters. You just need to know what the conversion factor is. It's just that when you're not accustomed to it, and I have preferences for certain things. For measuring, I generally prefer metric, but for temperature, because I grew up with Fahrenheit, I generally prefer Fahrenheit. And Fahrenheit is a finer division per degree. So for me, I like that better. I don't want the vagueness of Celsius. Now, if you grew up with Celsius, I'm sure it's perfectly fine.
Celsius is fine if you have the right kind of equipment to measure it, because you can have a digital readout, for example, that will read you 80.999 degrees Celsius.
Right.
The same thing goes for Fahrenheit. So really, it's more a matter of what you're comfortable with.
Right.
And we both grew up with the
imperial standards. So Fahrenheit and
that sounds
inches.
so terrible.
I know, but that's what it's called. And we, but like I say, for measurement, I generally prefer metric now because I'm used to it. I'm just not used to the Celsius stuff. So I just need to. I'll cheat. I'll put a sticker right there, that'll tell me exactly what I need to know. I do the same thing, or I talk to Siri and Siri tells me what my I've got a couple of heat mats for the greenhouse that, despite all the instructions in the world, do not switch over apparently to Fahrenheit. They're supposed to, but they don't. So I just simply ask Siri what the temperature is in Fahrenheit because I'm accustomed to that. And I know where I want things to be in Fahrenheit, whereas I don't always in Celsius. But yeah, we seem to be functional now.
Yeah, this is one more project off the desk over there.
Yeah, it's not off though until it functions in the studio.
It's off the desk over there, which is good because I have a lot of other things backed up there. I have another display case to illuminate.
Yeah, and I have to buy another set too.
So we have a lot of things going on, and I have the TIG welder that I also need to get down into the studio on my workbench. I have to clean that off first, and then I get to start doing some fabrication of more things for the business.
Right, right. Yeah, because we have to, fortunately, we have some time on some of this, but the time is going to fly faster than any of us could possibly imagine. So we have to decide. It's like I need to do a bunch of new banners and flags and stuff. Well, I have an event coming up in May, at the end of May. I might try and get a couple of them done just so that I can test run them at the event. I know what the banners are going to look like, the big flags. That's not a big deal. And I probably will not make those until after that event because I want them as fresh as possible when I go to that event. I want the colors to be as bright as possible. But some of the other ones where I want to see how they're actually going to look on the shop, I'd like to see if I can get a couple of those done. So I'll be definitely doing some videos on that because that's going to take a little bit of painting. I'm going to paint those banners on canvas. This looks like it's a go.
Yeah, from everybody that I've talked to and what I've read about using a vacuum wax injector, it solves several problems of wax flow into difficult places. Now there's other techniques that some people use. They use little cuts in the mold material to allow wax to go in and expand those cut marks a little bit. But this seems to be a much more preferable approach. And definitely the professional jewelers who make waxes that are going to be invested use a wax injector like this for the most part because they have a lot of production and it's got to go.
Depends on your level of production. You're one-of-a-kind people, I would say generally don't. They're just using air vents. But the people who are doing a lot of multiples, they definitely do it. Because I've seen that in use in Rio in their department where they're actually casting the little bits and pieces that we would buy. And they've got a squadron of ladies that stands there and runs multiple of these fancy, actually they have the Italian fancy ones.
Which are made with the same parts.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Some of them definitely are 100% in Italian. No, they're different than this. But the concept is the same. They've got a vacuum, they've got, and they have different ones depending on what they're doing. But a lady might have 2 or 3 different kinds of injector on their bench, and they're creating, you'll see them, they'll inject a mold, and they have a regular routine as to, you do this, do that, do the other thing. And depending on how fancy the setup is, some of them, they don't even have to talk to the mold at all. They don't have to set anything. They know that it's just...
they use an RFID chip that has all the information about that specific mold in it, which then sets all the parameters for the machine. In this case, we have 10 presets that Irene can program.
Right.
That should be enough for
It should be plenty.
most of
And
what
I think
you're
you also have some custom ones that are available. Most of these things have some. It's just like my kilns. They have preset things. The enamel kiln, particular has, I think, 3 presets, and then you can do custom setups for if you're doing something odd, which also allows you to use it for casting different things and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, I'm sure this is gonna, we have to fiddle with it. We still need to get some of the plastic to be able to make the mold holders, but I would say this is a mostly there situation, so that's a good thing. Yeah.
Say goodbye, Irene. Those are the pieces of plastic that they
I know they
supplied.
are. That's not the container that came in, though. That looks like a it's a container for... I'm just going to say it almost looks like a video tape box, but it's not.
You know what actually came in it?
No.
Fittings for the pneumatics.
That's ironic. Elbows. Yeah, it says 1/4 inch outside diameter elbows. Okay, well, hey, whatever works. I have a spot right now where I keep extra tubing and stuff like this from other projects. So we'll be enlarging that spot so that we can keep all these fittings in it. So that if you have something that falls apart, or because fittings and things do wear out eventually, or if you come up with some other issue where you need that sort of a fitting, you know where they are, which just makes it a lot easier.
Say goodbye, Irene.
Yeah, so be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because obviously we have a ton going on.
2 tons.
2 tons. I was doing enamel work in the studio today, and I was also doing some sharpening and polishing and some making of pins and things like that. So
I was mostly taking care of Rufus.
Yes, well, that was Rufus is doing way better. I mean, like he was excited to see me, but he managed to somehow keep all his feet on the ground when I came in instead of bouncing on top of me because he's not supposed to do that. And he's been a good boy today.
Yeah, so I sat on the floor to do some of this work, and he decided he was going to put his head in my lap.
Yes.
So he has a big head, and that means you don't move.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like you're pinned down, flunk. You know, oh, Daddy's sitting on the floor. He must want to play with me.
Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications because we still have 2 tons more of stuff to show you.
No, at least 2. And figure out ourselves, too, because we're still in the learning process, and I still need to go through and look at, they'll have recommended settings, I'm sure, and there'll be some sort of a parameter as to how those recommended settings are used. So I need to read through that again. I glanced at it, but it didn't make sense to try and work through the details until this was functioning.
Yeah, there was no point in her spending her time messing around with the documentation. That's what I was doing. But now it's her turn.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. We'll talk with you later.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, don't forget to brainstorm.
Yeah, obviously we are.